Hey guys, Rob Caputo here, and today what we're going to try to do is just try to revive an older Kranzle power washer unit, something that I found in one of our shops at work, and I've tried reviving a few of them. One of them worked, two of them didn't. I tried swapping out parts and it just doesn't work. So these things are pretty old. They're about, I would say, at least 10 years old. Believe it or not, I got one of them to work and it works perfectly and I use it to this day. But there are units that are on the older side and they need a little TLC. So I wanted to take a couple moments and kind of show you the steps that I take just to see if they work or not. The things that you need to look for, I'll put a couple links down below of the Kranzle unit's factory rep who kind of walks you through some of the repairs and the things to look for. But the first thing we're going to do on this one, and let me show you this Kranzle. So yeah, this thing is a little old. It's seen better days. Dirty, and you can see the sight glass where the oil is completely white. You can see the sight glass right here, and it's white. You know, whether it's just old or water got into it over time. The plastic shroud here is broken off. The other side is intact, as you can see here. Right, but this side on the opposite side, it's not there, but that's irrelevant and that's really like not necessary as long as we can get in here and kind of clean these parts out. But before I clean anything, before I do any of that, what I want to do is I want to change out the GFCI. You can see this thing has seen better days. I'm going to cut the wire back. I'm going to replace this with a brand new one that I got at box stores like Lowe's or Home Depot. I forgot which one I got that one from. Someone attempted to fix this. I honestly don't know, or they tried to make this waterproof by siliconing it to death. But anyway, we're gonna cut that back, we're gonna replace it, we're gonna bump it and see if the pistons actually run, see if this thing actually activates, and then we'll take the next step. We'll clean this gauge, maybe even put some new glycol in it, clean off the outlet, and everything else seems to be okay. We'll definitely replace the oil, and then we'll give it a shot, and then we'll see if we can revive this old. It's got a 2013 stamp on it, so that means that this thing is 12 years old. This thing is 12 years old. So hopefully we can get this thing to work. I mean, it doesn't look half bad. It's just more dirty than anything else. You know, typically nothing really goes wrong with the drive itself. The gearbox, it takes a lot to damage the gearbox. And all of these components are pretty solid. So really the only thing that can go wrong is power. And then the pistons in here, if they start to leak, you can replace the rings around the pistons, you know, so that you get compression. But hopefully that's not the case. And hopefully we can just kind of clean this up, put some new glycol in here, put new oil inside the gearbox, kind of clean this thing up, replace the GFCI, and get this thing to run. So let's check it out, let's try it. This is Talking with Cars. Now, first thing is I wanted to find out how much the parts would be for something like this. I mean, these units, brand new, go for like $1,200. I've seen it as high as $1,500 with the TS, with the total stop. But you can get it without that, so it might make it a little bit cheaper. But I wanted to get some prices on like the parts that you would normally get if you wanted to rebuild something like this. You know, and keep in mind, you have to kind of remember, you know, that there's other products out there like the Active 2.0 and the 2.3 or whatever it is that's out right now. That's cheap, very cheap, and much cheaper than something like this. So you have to kind of like decide whether or not it's worth spending the money on the parts. And taking the time. If you're willing to do it and you want to get that Kranzle unit to work, completely rebuildable. These things, you can actually take them apart and you can rebuild every part of this thing. You know, every one of these parts are available and you can get it pretty much at your local dealership or your representative. I happen to have a dealership near me, within 10 miles of me. So I went over there and I asked them for prices. And just to give you an idea, a check valve kit is over $100. It's $106. A complete kit, a repair kit, is about $170, $180. So that's kind of getting up there, right? Where you can get an Active 2.0 for like what? I don't even know what they're selling for, a few $100. So, or you can go to Harbor Freight Tools and buy like something inexpensive. You know, as long as it's got the water flow that you're looking for, like 2 gallons a minute, which these typically do. And again, you know, I'm using this for pressure washing cars and stuff like that. So you don't need the PSI, you just need the gallons per minute and all that. So you can get a pretty inexpensive power washer on the market. You know, I mean, I know Adams sells their own, or they brand their own. Griot sells a few. And there's a bunch of other brands out there, and I'll put a few links down below for some of the most popular brands that typically people buy for professional and for home use, you know. If you get all these kits, you're talking $400, right? So it's the price of a new Active 2.0 and all that kind of stuff. So you got to decide, you know, is it really worth it? Is it really, you know, for me, I enjoy kind of like going through this process and trying to figure out if I can repair something like this rather than throwing it out. It just seems like a waste. I was able to revive one of them, as I said earlier. The other two I was not able to fix, although you can fix them, like I said, you know. But if you want to put in a few hours of your time, spend a few $100 on parts, you can get yourself a Kranzle unit pretty inexpensively. So first things first, let's see if this thing bumps. Let's see if we can get it to run first. So the first thing I'm going to do is replace this GFCI, this like sad excuse of a repair here. So I'm going to cut the wire back. I'm going to start working on that. I have the camera kind of shining down on me, so you know, you can see the process, and I'll fast forward through each step. I'm also going to check the wire to see if there's any breaks, any cuts, because if I do find a cut, I'm probably going to want to cut the wire. This wire is really long, so it doesn't necessarily, for me, it doesn't necessarily have to be that long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wind it out and see if there's any breaks, clean the wire as I do that. And if I see any breaks or cuts, then I'm going to cut the wire back to that point. Right off the bat, it looks like it's in pretty decent shape, just needs to be cleaned. So that's what I'm going to do. And all I'm doing here is I'm taking some all-purpose cleaner, spraying some on one of these rags or towels, and I'm actually going to just wipe it clean from beginning to end. Wrap the wire around with this, and I'm going to inspect the wire as I go. Some chafing, of course, because it was used. I mean, this thing is... So the cable looks halfway decent. It doesn't look bad at all. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it back. I'm going to cut it back a few feet to about there. I'm going to expose the wires, and I'm going to install, temporarily, I'm going to install one of these, right, before I spend time putting a GFCI on it, just to bump it and see if it actually gets to run. So let's do that. Let's start working on the wiring. There we go. And just commonly you see like 3 wires. You see the green, which is the ground, your black, and then your neutral, right? Your power and your neutral. So you just have to just understand where to like tie it into when you're installing it on one of these. Okay, either this one or the GFCI. But for now, like I said, all we're going to try to do is we're going to try to bump the unit and see if we can get it to run before we spend hours doing everything else. And actually, I made the mistake of cutting into the wire. So I'm going to cut this back a little bit further. I got plenty here. I'm going to be a little bit more careful next time. So now I got all the nonsense around it removed. It was just basically the insulation and all that kind of stuff. And now I'm going to expose the ends of these wires just enough so that I can get it connected to the terminals on the plug. So now you'll see on this, you have a terminal for, right, for your black, your terminal for your white, and your terminal for your ground. So You need to make sure that you get the ground in the right spot and the other two. All right, so the black wire goes to the brass terminal. All right. Oh, all right, I didn't have the base under it. So you have to put the base on first and then up, duh. All right, loosen it up, do it again. Don't use a drill for this, just use your screwdriver. Because it's a quick screw, it only takes a couple turns. All right, so that's it, new end. Good to go. So the question is, before we move on to anything else, will this bump? Will this actually activate? Will the motor run? So that's what we want to find out first before we go too far. All right, so here's the moment of truth. Let's see if we can get this unit to bump and cycle through. I just plugged it in. So, and I guess one of the questions that's going to be asked is, does it need to have a GFCI? Now, no, it doesn't have to have a GFCI on the unit. However, you do need to have a GFCI in line, right? So you can get one of those external GFCIs, and I'll put that in the link down below also. As long as it's in line and it's in that same circuit, then you're okay. You don't have to have the GFCI, this, on the unit directly. Does it help? Yeah, and it makes it super convenient. So you're never forgetting that you have a GFCI. If you're using it and water gets onto the outlet, then at least you know it's gonna click off and it's gonna save your life, right? So safety first, just make sure that you're doing the right thing. So let's try this. Let's try to bump it and let's see if we can move on to the next step, which is cleaning it up and changing out the oil. Okay, it sounds like it's turning. Sounds like it's bumping, it's turning. The switch works. I don't hear anything funky going on. So let's take a moment, let's clean this up a little bit and take the next step, which is changing out the oil. And while you're inspecting it, just inspect all the different parts. Just inspect the plastic. I can see that there's one mounting screw that's damaged. It looks like it was dropped. I don't know if you could see that right here. So that was dropped and that's broken off. So that means the tail end of this cover right here, doesn't have anything secure, but thankfully there's multiple screws on here that keeps it tight. You know, just keep that in mind and just be aware. So while you're cleaning it, inspect it, make sure everything is okay. And if I get this to work, you know, then maybe it could be used. Maybe it could be salvaged. You know, I'm not saying in a work environment, but maybe it could be used. And let me unplug it too, so it doesn't automatically like kick on for some reason. And I'm gonna be taking this top part apart because I wanna clean up this a little bit better, clean the on-off switch a little bit better, because you can do that. And I'll use the screw gun for that. And there's typically 4 Phillips heads, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. This 4th one's broken, and that's what you remove. All right, so this whole piece here, you can see how like beaten up this is, and you can remove this part here, which I'm going to do, so I can clean this up a little bit. The interior is just spotless. I mean, the capacitor is okay. Everything seems okay. Obviously, the on-off switch works fine. Just stay away from the capacitor. Don't play around with that. That holds energy, obviously. So just stay away from that. If you have to replace the capacitor, just get some help with an electrician. You know, they can remove it safely. You know, they basically remove the energy that's inside of it before they do anything. And I'm pretty sure the new capacitor that you can get, which I believe is like $80 also. So I removed that. The on-off switch. Now I can clean that off. But it is amazing to me that something this old could theoretically still work. I mean, the units that are at Home Depot and Lowe's, those are actually designed to only last, you know, so many years, you know, like a couple years, 1 year, 2 years. They have only so many service hours built into them. That's what they're designed for. So just keep that in mind. When you're buying those inexpensive units, you're paying for it too, because you have inferior parts, you know, they're not really designed that efficiently. I mean, I know the ryobis that I've reviewed, they're good units. I mean, don't get me wrong, especially the gas-powered one is an excellent unit. But you have to remember, I mean, those parts are inexpensive. They're not high quality. They're only meant to last so many hours of use. So just keep that in mind. They're not bulletproof. These Kranzles are German made. They're not bulletproof, but they're pretty close. Well-made units for sure. Very good units. So, all right, so I clean that up, clean the on-off switch button up. I'm gonna screw that back into place. As you can tell, I have an extension on there because in order to get to the Phillips head, you need a little bit of extension on the screwdriver to get to it. We're probably gonna need a brush for this. This can be removed. Basically, you just move this back, right? And this adjusts the pressure. This is the pressure regulator. You can kind of like bring it in a little bit, right? That increases the pressure, you draw it out, and then that'll decrease the pressure, right? So, but, you know, there's a nut here, and this whole thing spins off if you want to remove it. Some carcass parts off of another unit. So I do have another piece of these. I have another gauge. I have another end. The seals and stuff like that, I wouldn't swap them out with another unit unless you were desperate. I would replace those with brand new ones. So let's do this. Let's clean this up with a brush and then get to this gauge. And all this is a detail brush, right? It's an Adams, I believe this is Adams. Chemical Guys detail brush. And it's not a high quality one at all. Just something I use for like odds and ends. And it looks good, right? You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're not looking for perfection here. This thing is, what did I say? I mean, are you kidding me? 11 years old. Why do I keep saying 12, 15 years old, 20 years old? It's 11 years old. Based on when we purchased it. So it could be a little bit older, to be honest. I'd have to see if there's a serial number on here. There is a serial number. I could check with the manufacturer and find out exactly how old this thing is, but because I'm kind of feeling confident that I'm gonna get this thing to work. I'm hoping, otherwise I'm just cleaning this off for nothing. But it did bump, right? So I'm trying to remain positive, right? That's how the first one was, and we got it to work, right? It was a power issue, above all. There were other issues with the very first unit that I restored. But yeah, it just basically needed to be cleaned. It needed a new GFCI. Cable was damaged in a couple spots actually. So, all right, let's get to this gauge. Let's clean this off a little bit. I mean, it looks like it's cleaning off really good. And there is glycol in it, you know? I mean, I'm gonna take this off. I'm gonna find out what size. I think the dirt and the oil kind of kept everything clean. Yeah. Yeah, it looks like it's a 14 millimeter. And it looks like this has been removed once before because I see some tape on it. I'm gonna clean that off. You know, obviously the way this works is there's water flow that comes through this entire assembly. It presses up on this and then it actuates the gauge that's here to tell you how many PSI or bar. You know it has the right amount of glycol when you're standing it upright and you could just basically barely see the top of the glycol. You could see that? All right, so that's good, that's perfect. Now I could replace the glycol that's in here, but I'm not gonna go through that trouble yet, not quite yet. You know, let's go through this, and honestly, look. That's damaged. See how that's bent? And I thought that was weird because, you know, if you really look at the gauge, one part of the gauge is out a little bit further. So that's damaged. So hopefully, I think I have another one that I salvaged off of another unit. So let's grab that. All right, so I do have another unit, another pressure gauge that's here on the back side of it. Yep, it's full. I didn't even have to remove it to find out. All right, so it's full. All right, got some of my plumber's tape. And just so you know, I got the glycol. You can get it from Kranzle, but it's very expensive. I got this online from Baker. It's glycol, instrument glycol. So it's specifically designed for these types of things. It's a very thick consistency. It's not quite honey. It's less than honey in terms of viscosity, but anyway, so that's what I used. And we're gonna put a little bit of plumber's tape on here. That's what I have right now. Right, just make sure it doesn't cover any holes or anything like that. And then we'll reapply it, reinstall it. Do it hand tight first so you don't thread any, cross thread. And then use the 14 millimeter to tighten it back up. And it doesn't have to be super tight. Just tight enough so it doesn't leak. All right, the other thing I want to do too is change the oil. Let's change out the oil. And I'll have to get my hands on another one of these gauges just in case I do run into another unit that needs a little TLC. But let's change out the oil. I can kind of walk you through that. This is the oil, right? 15W40, right? And you need something that doesn't foam, right? So this is a very good quality oil, meets all the standards. And I talked to the rep for Kranzle to make sure, and he said, yes, that's fine. As long as you use a good high quality 15W40 oil, then you're good to go. So let's change that out, because that's gonna be a little bit messy. You can see down here, there's a plug. Then you have the fill, which is up top here, the red cap, and then the sight glass that I'm gonna remove. So I'm gonna remove all three, evacuate everything, and then replace the oil. And what you do is you replace the oil up to the top of the sight line. So if you see, just like the gauge, if you see just a little bit of a bubble at the top of that sight line, then you're good, right? It doesn't take much. It looks like it's a 13 millimeter. I'm just gonna double check a 12 millimeter, just to be certain. And then what we wanna do, and I believe the sight glass and the filler cap are exactly the same size. So let's find out what size that is. All right, 22 millimeter, and I'm gonna use the larger wrench for that. Not that I need to, it's just that so I have two wrenches being worked on. And you wanna remove the cap first, the filler cap, so that when you're removing the oil from the bottom side, just like when you do an oil change on your car, what you wanna do is you wanna remove the oil cap on top to allow air to enter into the engine. The oil kind of like comes out quickly. All right, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna loosen this up, get the wire out of the way. So we're gonna loosen this up right here, and then have it drain into this container. And I remove the top, right? So air can actually come in, and then all the oil will exhaust itself out of the unit. Now, depending on who did this before, it might be a little difficult. All right, there we go. Now you can set yourself up with a little rig where you can remove the oil a little bit easier. I'm just doing it this way so I can catch it on camera. But ooh, wow, that's white. That's nasty looking. We're gonna have this exhaust itself into the container, get all of it out of here, and then replace it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna put some oil in here and let it flush out. So I'm gonna actually waste some oil to kind of flush the system out, get all of this white junk out of here. Oil plug back in. Just making sure I don't strip it. But I definitely wanna remove as much of that old oil as possible. Now again, it doesn't have to be perfect because we still don't even know if this unit's gonna work 100%. There is an O-ring on this. What I wanna do is kind of clean this off. So I'm gonna put that aside. And what we could do is we could basically use like WD-40 or something like that to kind of rinse it off. Or actually, you could probably use brake cleaner. That might work better. rinse it down. See? And it's clean. And now we can reinstall it. And you can see the rubber O-ring in there. Hopefully you can see that. It looks like it's in good shape. So I'm just gonna make this hand tight. Doesn't have to be super tight, right? It kind of stops itself, and the O-ring is what's preventing the oil from coming out. All right, so hopefully you can see this. And the sight glass had some of that milky liquid in there. And it also has an O-ring on here. So I'm gonna just clean this off with the brake cleaner also, because it did such a good job. Sight glass is working again. I can actually physically see what's going on, right? Nice and clean. And again, it has an O-ring, so it doesn't have to be super tight. And there is residual in there, no question about it. But we're not going to worry ourselves about that right now. We just want to get this thing going, and we're good to go. So I think what I want to do now is I want to fill this up with oil. Again, 15W40, Shell Rotella, reduced engine maintenance, high quality oil. All right, so let's watch the sight glass as we do this. And then once it reaches to the top of the sight glass, boop, I stop. That's it. And we're going to use the 22mm to just make it snug. And that's it. Oil's replaced. Another thing I'd like to do is I'd like to take this end and kind of brush that off, brush that clean. But for now, I think we're okay. I like to just make this end kind of look brand new again. And all I do is use a wire wheel. I use actually the bench grinder, and I have a wire wheel on it. And I just run it. I take this off and I run it through there, and it makes it look nice and new again. So I could do that a little bit later, but for now, we got to see if this thing runs. So let's bring it outside. Let's connect it to a hose. All right, connected it, water's on. I'm going to purge the system right now. There is a little bit of a water leak just at the hose connection. So I think I'm just going to replace a seal there. That should be pretty easy. Oh, it's hot. Okay, let's plug it in and turn it on. I'm going to use a 25-degree 2.5 orifice to see what kind of pressure I'm getting. If I get any. I'm not getting pressure. Gears are running, motor's running. Nope. Wah, wah. Again, that's why I didn't want to spend too much time on it. I mean, there's a little bit of pressure, right? You can actually see an increase. So it could just simply be the seals. Tried to get it to work. This one is not working. Again, I mean, I'd be amazed after 11 years. It's obvious that the seals are not 100%, but I believe if you just replace the seals on this, you'd get the full PSI. It's not even registering on the gauge. So, hey, we tried. Kind of walked you through cleanup and some of the parts on it and an oil change. So at minimum, you get that. Talk to you later. Peace.